9 a.m. sharp Bangkok time, GMT 7 as it says on the World Wide Web. Welcome to the Surrounded by Details podcast with me, Stevo. I am your host today, and on all the other episodes, let me turn down the volume here, even though I like the beach vibe. It is not always beachy, at least the vibe is not always beachy here in Bangkok, the concrete jungle, or the Venice of the East, as it is called at many occasions. Before I start, as always, thank you so much to our supporter Dreamcatcher. It's a hostel here in Bangkok, a bar and cafe, loads of good craft beer, good food, good vibes, good music, by the way. So if you plan to stay in Bangkok, make sure to stay there. They're friendly people. And I guess if you're listening to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you are friendly too. Also, big shout out to Eastpack, by the way, who sent me a little gift card. So I'm gonna make a selection of bags. Thank you so much for supporting my travels and this podcast. More about that in the upcoming newsletters. You can inform yourself about what I am up to or what the podcasts have been up to on my monthly newsletter. I started it in 2015, 2016, then I had a little break because I was too lazy, to be honest, but I brought it back a month ago and it is popular, more popular than ever. So I hope you will enjoy that and register yourself. Send me email with your email and then I put you on the list. What are we all about today? Today we're going to talk about the Secret War of Laos, and the reason for that is that I actually wanted to invite a guy that I worked together with or interviewed with my colleague and friend Antoine Chera when we did this documentary reportage about the Secret War of Laos. His name is Grant Evans, and when I was Googling, I found out, unfortunately, that Grant Evans passed away just a couple of months after we did the interview. And I thought, hey, this project never really got the attention it deserved, so I want to bring it back to life, and that's the reason why I wanted to do this episode about this subject. Now, with that in mind, I'm a photographer, I'm not a historian in any way, so I try my best to explain to you guys what it's all about, and I'm going to cheat a little bit on the side. I'm going to talk about the Secret War of Laos, or the bombing of Laos, while I actually have my text in front of me. Hopefully we will be able to get the text and the photo images published in the very near future. I'm in the talks with a couple of magazines, and we will also give a slight re-edit of the video and trailer. So look out on my social media where you can subscribe, by the way, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Steve Bonhage, STEVBONHAGE. Keep yourself up to date, educate yourself before you entertain yourself. And even though our last episode with JR Chrysologo from the Lion's Head Boxing Gym was very entertaining, and also the episode before, and the episode before that, and the episode before that were all entertaining and educating. We try to keep a nice vibe between fun and actually doing something purpose-filled. I don't know if that's the way you say it. Hashtag not a native English speaker. And as I said here in our little warm-up party before we started, it is gray here in Bangkok, but as I started this podcast, the sun is coming out a little bit more, so I got sunshine in my bag, and I think let's dive straight into it. And for the people who haven't been in Laos, it is a landscape that you can't find nowhere else. It is beautiful, it's unique, and you realize immediately that Mother Nature has put her A-game out. Laos is a land located in Southeast Asia between China, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma or Myanmar and Vietnam, and is probably one of the most forgotten countries in our time. In a place where communism rules, you can discover a country opening their boundaries more and more towards the Western tourism with all its naturalness and beauty. You will find nothing else than, beautiful nature, no highways, no industry, no railways except for the border connection to Thailand, and no skyscrapers or any signs of ambitions to bring about change anytime in the near future. So it seems like Laos, the jewel of the Mekong, as the National Tourism Authority calls it, appears to be the door to another world. While you can find more rivers and waterfalls in the south and the middle of the country, the north appears as seemingly endless mountains. And let me confirm, there are mountains. When we did this project in 2014, the beginning of 2014, we took a minivan all the way up there, and it seemed to me that the van driver had a goal, and that is, or was, to make everybody puke in the van, because it just went in curves up and down, and on the right side you had the mountains, on the left side you had the cliffs straight down. For the people who have been in Laos, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful landscape up there. So yeah, it's definitely an adventure and an experience to take the minivan up there. So those views make it hard to recognize actually what kind of secret Laos has, whose history goes back to the 15th century and its people are hiding. A secret that is ignored until this very day. And I have to mention here at this point that it actually gets a little bit more attention. We had Obama visiting Laos not long ago, and he was the first US American sitting president to actually visit the country, and with that there were a bunch of documentaries filmed and also talked about this Secret War of Laos. So there is more and more attention coming to it, and hopefully with the country opening up more and more, there will be more people being made aware of this problem. Even though that more tourists can also mean a bigger problem of that. I'm going to come to that later, why these two things are related. More tourists should normally mean more awareness, but at the same time it also means more problems. Gonna come to that in a minute. So the whole subject, the Secret War of Laos, let me get straight to it, or back into it. The Vietnam War during the 60s and 70s gave Laos the title of the most bombed country in the world. The Secret War was a military operation by the US of A and the CIA against the Ho Chi Minh regime, a street network that reached from North to South Vietnam and got used by the North as a hashtag not a native English speaker, logistical supply route for the NLF. Now, sounds pretty much like the NFL, but it's the other way around. NLF, that means the National Liberation Front. To avoid American bombings, the Vietnamese relocated big parts of the transit routes through Laos and Cambodia so that the Americans could not attack with land troops, as Laos was neutral at the time, and so it would be an extraordinary act of violence, as P.R. Grant Evans, an now this is a difficult word, an anthropology professor at the Hong Kong University, puts it. And I'm gonna read a little bit about the interview he gave to Antoine, who was filming the interview, and I later put to paper. So let me read to you a little bit about that. He said the Vietnamese started coming into Laos in the late 1950s. The Laotian government at that stage had been independent from France for only about 4 or 5 years at the time. It was still very small, very weak, and was in no position whatsoever to tell the Vietnamese not to come through their country. He continues, the Lao, of course, looked around for allies to help them, and the Americans were immediately on hand, as the time, the Cold War, was at its height, and the American policy was to hold the line against communism at all costs. This led to Laos getting caught up in what became as the Vietnam War, which would be a sideshow for Cambodia, but particular for Laos. In other words, both sides were willfully conducting military activities inside these countries without consulting the local government. The Americans were not prepared to send troops to Laos, so alternatively, they built up the Laotian army as well as built up regular Hmong forces. Now I have to scroll down here and I have to scroll to the left. Under a general in Laos named Nak Pao. This irregular army became the main operating force in the Kiang Quang area to resist the Vietnamese communists. If we talk about the American shelling of Laos, there were two main areas which were bombed. One was the province of Xiang Quang, and I hope I don't butcher that too much, but that is where we went, Antoine and me, for shooting the documentary. And then further south, where the Ho Chi Minh Trail ran, the Ho Chi Minh Trail ran mainly through Laos and partially through Cambodia. Of course, the Americans wanted to stop the trail because it was a major supply route for the North Vietnamese through the south. But the Americans started bombing North Vietnam from airfields in northeast Thailand. So they were flying across Laos to drop bombs in North Vietnam. At times they couldn't drop the bombs on target as it was obscured, and due to the primitive technology, I like the word that he uses here, primitive technology that existed at the time. They didn't want to land with prime bombs, so they were instructed to just drop them just over Laos, because of the assumption that there was hardly anybody there, or that this sort of bombing wouldn't strike anyone in particular. What it did, however, was leave behind this huge amount of unexploded bombs, which are still killing people to this very day. That is the statement. I'm going to continue here in a little bit, but it remembers me, and this is also why I record the episode a little bit, because I kind of want to make aware of the work that PR Grant Evans did, and he did an amazing job. And when we interviewed him, you could see that he was not just studying a subject, he was emotionally involved, and that is what I always really appreciate. And this is where I think the work is done best, when people are emotionally investigated in the subject they deal with. However, with that being said, he continues, by this time they had begun to use anti-personnel bombs, which they would drop even through the bombs were not designed to explode because they were anti-personnel. Now that doesn't make any sense to me, the whole world build or structure here, anti-personnel. Maybe that's because I'm not a native English speaker, but whatsoever, he continues. So naturally, these are the ones that have been killing people or maiming them, and in particular blowing off their leg when walking or blowing off their hand. It's often curious children whom are injured when they curiously pick up an unknown object. So even once the war was finally over, there was all this explosive rubbish left behind. And this is what I meant before when I said with more tourism, it should be easier to make aware of this subject. But at the same time, with tourism coming into your country, it also means that the locals want to make a little bit of money, and the metal that they can gather from these bombs is very valuable to them, because they make forks, they make knives and all this kind of stuff out of these things. So grown-ups and kids, they walk and look for these bombs and often get surprised when they find them. By summarizing the statement of Grant Evans, the numbers that appear are frightening. Between the years 1964 and 1973, the Americans dropped over 260 million bombs over Laos. Now that is an insane number, and that is more than was dropped on Iraq in 1991, 1998 and 2001 combined. That is insane numbers, of which only 1% have been recovered to date. With 580,000 missions, this equates to one bombing every 8 minutes for 9 years. Now let that sink in to your head, how insane that is. The fact that the US government has spent 51 million in 16 years of cleaning up, while 3 bombing missions cost them the same, is very sad, but still very much a fact. These numbers will take hundreds of years to clean up, as on here is where it gets really complicated. Boyuniot Shantana Wong, provincial manager of Mines Advisory Group, aka MAG, explains. You can go and check out their website. I'm going to put it in the description later on. It's a bomb cleaning squad that you can find all over the world, and they also do amazing work in Laos. He tells us that the impact on the Laos socio-economic development is huge, since local communities neither have access to their farming land nor access to water, healthcare, medical treatment, or even basic education. The massive amount of unexploded bombs left behind have their consequences, which have already killed over 20,000 people until today. Now, those 20,000 people killed until today was actually after 1973. So not only with the terror that took place between 1964 and 1973, it still continues to kill people by as I mentioned, try to make money out of these bombs. And this is not necessarily the stupidity of the locals, it's just the education that is missing. And we went to different schools, by the way, when we were up there. We were up there for around 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks. And we went to different schools and saw a bunch of kids that had been in contact with these bombs. And we also saw that there are people who try to make more aware or educate the kids of the danger that is lying all around the country. So they have these posters set up in all the schools where they picture, and I think, let me see, I actually have the pictures here, in 4 to 5 pictures. It's like a little comic where they show what to do and what not to do. And it's very sad once you look at it, because if you grow up in Laos, even if you don't have that much money, the people are very happy. And this is what people often underestimate here in Southeast Asia. You don't need a lot of money to be happy. However, when you have this huge playground, a forest where you can build sandcastles or whatever you do as a kid. I built sandcastles with my buddy on construction sites that weren't really starting to construct, if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say there, it's a huge playground, and yet with all this area that you could use for farming or for playing or for whatever it is, it's there and you cannot use it, you cannot touch it, you cannot do anything. Unfortunately, growing tourism does push local people to risk their lives by encroaching on these deceptive fields to collect metal trash for art, which is very popular amongst tourists. That is what I mentioned before. So if you go to Laos, educate yourself before you entertain yourself. Make yourself aware of what is actually helpful and what is actually more damaging to the country. And if there's one thing that I experienced during my travels here in Southeast Asia, that is that I'm a little bit small, sick and tired of tourists, even though I'm one myself. But it's exactly that experience of myself that made me a little bit sick. Because you see it as your vacation, you see it as your adventure, you don't see it as a regular life for other people and what that includes for them. So make yourself a little bit more aware, or inform yourself a little bit more of what you actually buy and where the money goes. Only rare information is provided to make people visiting Laos aware of what is behind their innocently purchased souvenirs. One of the few places of support and to get information is the Cope Visitor Center in Vientiane, the capital of Laos. That is where I had my hostel in 2013 and 14, and for every guest that came to Vientiane, they had all their tourist guides, and all these tourist guides actually said Vientiane is not a place where you would like to stay for very long, maybe a day, maybe two, and then you would like to continue on to Lumpur in the north or wherever you want to go. However, I always recommended to go to the Cope Visitor Center because it's a great place of finding information and get in touch with the subject. Because if it's often in today's society, if the problem is not outside your door, it's not really that important. It's a little bit like climate change. It's not gonna happen today, it's not gonna happen tomorrow, it might not even affect me in my lifetime, so I don't need to take it that serious. We need to stop with that kind of stuff. You need to realize just because something is not happening outside your door, it doesn't affect you. Stop fooling yourself. The problem is as real as it is if it would be straight in your living room or your kitchen or wherever you have problems. Maybe you have problems in the bedroom, nobody knows. However, the not-for-profit organization was formed in 1997 and provides access to both orthopedic and prosthetic devices and rehabilitation services. I can't believe that I said those words right. My English teacher would be proud of me. However, the center provides treatment for patients that have been involved in bomb accidents and support the families that are affected by the consequences, like outstanding farm work for self-sufficiency. And now we have to scroll down here. By the way, if you want to see the photo work that I did, you can go on my website www.stevebonhage.com, STEVBONHAGE, and then you just go to SBP work, look for travel, and you will find the gallery named and called The Secret War of Laos. Let's continue here. According to Grant Evans, it was everybody's war, and as much as it is a fact that there was an American secret war, as much it is a fact that China and Vietnam were involved, even if they still deny their participation in this confrontation. Nothing shocking here, in my opinion. Even the Russians, who were supplying military hardware through the Vietnamese, he continues, were there. Everybody involved denied that they were doing, and it was in everybody's interest to do so. The result of nobody admitting their role leaves a wounded Laos and its 6 million inhabitants behind that have to deal with the fatal consequences by its own, and so it is even more impressive to see with what warmth and kindness the people live in this country, where the government is conservative and tries to fight against changes, while its population is quiet, open for new things, and tolerant. Harmony is probably the biggest trait that Laos has to offer. And that to me is amazing. If you have to deal with a history like that, if you have to deal with the brutality, and maybe not even brutality in a conscious way, because as I mentioned earlier, the Americans thought that nobody was there. Because Laos is such a big country, maybe not on a map, but big country when it comes to jungle and forest. And you don't know where people are. But the insanity back then is just the assumption that nobody is there. And one of my most memorable moments when we were shooting this documentary was when we were visiting a village in the middle of the forest, and Antoine was shooting videos somewhere, and I was taking off a little bit to take photos of the landscape. And I got told before I left, do not leave the road, do not go on any fields. And as it is as a photographer, you can often get into what you do, you get into the zone, and before you know, you find yourself in a place where you shouldn't be. And that was a very intense moment, to be there and realize how fast this can happen. You don't think about it. You just take a step here, you see something there, and then before you know, you are in the middle of trouble. Luckily, it didn't end bad. Got back on track, and when we were supposed to leave the village, we took the car. And it was one of those places directly at the border to Vietnam. We could literally see over to Vietnam, and it slowly got dark. The sun was about to set, and half the way I was like, please stop the van. I need to get out here. I need to take a picture of the sunset. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And the driver told me that he cannot wait because he cannot drive the car there by night, so he needed to go. I don't know how far it was away from where we were staying. I think it was around maybe 7-8K from where I left the car. And then Antoine, of course, videographer nerd as he is, joined me in on that and said, okay, I'm gonna do that as well. And then we had Philip with us, a guy who worked for the Lao Rugby Federation, who were supporting us in getting up there because they had this cooperation. They went up to the villages and the schools and teach them a little bit of rugby, and at the same time teach them a little bit about cleaning your hands before you eat, all this basic kind of stuff. So he said, okay, I'm gonna be with you guys, I'm doing this. So we waited there for maybe an hour and a half. We had an amazing time. The sun was slowly setting behind the mountains, one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful sunset that I've ever seen. And we didn't really think about that after the sunset it becomes dark, and we didn't have any flashlights with us. So we basically used our phones, and we saw the bonfires in the jungles in the distance, and it was beautiful. We even passed some people who had food, and we got told it's not the most safest place to walk in the middle of the night, but that's what you got to do. These are the kind of moments that you don't really think through when you're a photographer or videographer. You just go, and you are just in love with the situation and the footage that you are able to create of this beautiful situation, if that makes any sense. However, we made our way back, and as close as we came to the village, we heard the barking dogs, and you know how it is. Dogs, I'm generally a little bit scared of dogs, not too much, but I don't know, there's just some energy I have with certain dogs, because I got chased as a little kid as a dog. I have a scar over my right eye because of that. So I have some bad experience, overcome that because my dad and my parents always had dogs. But some dogs I just can't deal with. However, we heard the barking in the distance, and as closer we came, we kind of tried to figure out a way, what would we do if these dogs would attack us? So we had Antoine in the back with a tripod, we had me in the front with a tripod, and Philip in the middle, and he just turned around left and right and said left, left, right, right, and yeah, we tried to defend ourselves. Luckily, we didn't really get attacked, but yeah, when we came to the village, back to the village, and we came to our hostel where we were staying, where we had rice soup for I don't know how long, 3 times a day for a week and a half. The other 2 people from the Lao Rugby Federation that were there with us were having a couple of beers and were just enjoying, and they were just laughing when we came back. I don't know for how long we walked in the middle of the jungle between minefields and cliffs, so I don't know, I didn't really feel like laughing, but at the same time I was looking forward to that beer, and I was looking forward to food, and I was looking forward to be back. That was an amazing experience, and I hope that this little podcast episode made you a little bit more interested in the subject and get you interested enough to do some research for yourself about the subject and see what is going on in Laos and how you can support the recovery of this beautiful country. With that being said, I'm basically pretty much at the end of this podcast episode because I'm by myself today. I just wanted to read this little article to you, or try to put it in my own words. I hope I made a little bit of sense, and as I said, I hope you enjoyed it and can gather the interest and the energy to actually educate yourself a little bit more. There is a documentary out there on YouTube, by the way, by ABC or something, which I watched yesterday, but it just got me furious because the guy who did it was just ridiculous. There was a typical, I don't want to drag all Americans in one pothole, but there was a typical ignorant, I don't care American reporter. He was able to talk to one of the kids who just lost an arm or a leg, I don't remember what it was, and yeah, he just threw out stupid sentences as well, now you know, don't you? And that just made me furious. And some people, man, they just don't pay any attention to how they appear to other people. Also, what made me really feeling weird is that he went into the jungle with, I don't know, fucking shirt and just looked if he's going straight to office. That was a little bit weird. However, it is worth watching, even if it's a little bit weird. Make sure to check that out if you Google the Secret War of Laos if you Google that, or the bombing of Laos, or also the Civil War of Laos, you will find all kind of information about this subject. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, even though it was very, very short. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, I would like to ask you for your support. So please find us on Podbean, iTunes, or where else, SoundCloud or Stitcher, where you can download all our episodes for free, audio only, but we are only recording audio at the moment. We will be back with the studio in the very near future, hopefully. More about that coming by the middle or end of August. I'm very excited to tell you guys all about it. So yeah, check us out on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, Surrounded by Details podcast. If you want to follow me on social media, you can do so as well. Check out Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Very easy to find now because I made the change. It took me a little bit longer, but better later than never. At Steve Bonhage, STEVBONHAGE. And if you're not a social media person, then just go on my website www.stevebonhage.com stevebonhage.com, again STEVBONHAGE, where you can find all my photography work and my podcast, also the photography work of this project. Just go to the travel section and look for the Secret War of Laos. The clip and the trailer will be re-edited. My man Antoine Chirard is in Nigeria at the moment. This guy is just everywhere. Last time I spoke to him on the podcast, he was biking through the Balkan somewhere, and I'm very pleased and I'm very much looking forward to actually have him here in Thailand at the end of August. I'm gonna go to Myanmar with this guy. We're gonna do a story about Lethway. I'm gonna shoot the event. I'm gonna bring him along, show him a little bit of the fight scene that I'm involved in at the moment. Because if you have listened to the episode with Antoine Chirard before, I think it was episode 57, I might be completely wrong whatsoever. Maybe it was 42, maybe it was 69, I don't know. Just look around for the episode with Antoine. We both come from a breakdance background, so it's fun to meet once in a while and see how you have developed. Looking forward to that. I'm gonna bring the podcast with me to Myanmar on Sunday morning, 9 a.m. this Sunday, July 30th. I'm gonna have another phone companion for the UFC 214 with my man TJ McKenzie from the Small Talk podcast in Phuket, and we're gonna watch the fights. Cormier versus Jones 2. I hope nothing will happen that get this fight off the fight card, because they tried to fight now for, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 times. Can't wait to see that happen. And then it is the very last podcast on August 1st with the man himself, Bear Frazier. Another MMA episode where we're gonna look ahead of the One Championship events, Macau and Kuala Lumpur. We heard some rumors that there will be an event in Shanghai at the beginning of September. We're gonna talk about all that and the fights included on August 1st. I believe 10:30 a.m. it is, but again, I might be talking shit out of my ass here. Just make sure to follow me on social media and you can keep yourself up to date. If you have anything to say, what we could adjust, what you might thought was not so good or what you liked, then please leave us a comment or leave us a like or send me a message. If you have any ideas about guests, if you think you would be interested to come on the show, let me know and we see what we can do. Shout out to my man Benjamin R. Williams, who is the man behind Pass Unwritten. He's somewhere in China, very interesting guy. He's always involved with some sort of archaeology and history in China. A weird guy, but a friendly guy. We had him on the podcast as well. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to him soon. I know he's listening somewhere. Shout out to you, my man. And with that being said, I'm off for today. And be awesome. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. And the sun is coming out more and more. And I'm gonna enjoy it. See you guys.